Yo, boxing is crazy. The theater of the unknown. Wilder's career currently in no man's land. Deontay Wilder was brutally knocked out by Zhilei Zhang. Anybody who watches my channel, you will know that I warned you guys of this particular fight. I'm a big fan of Zhang. I'm a big fan of Wilder. I like both. I've met both. But this is boxing. Styles make fights. You have this 300-pound Chinese dude who's an Olympian, heavy-handed, and he's a southpaw. So for me, it doesn't really make sense that this was the pick, and I will explain if you stay tuned till the end of this video why it doesn't make sense for Wilder to have taken this particular fight, and I'll spare you guys the suspense. The reason being is you have His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh Riyadh season, and they've put out statements stating they wanted Wilder, if he was able to get a W, of course, versus Zhang, to fight Anthony Joshua, possibly in Wembley. At another point, you heard the same Riyadh season promoter or frontman with all the money. He said that Wilder versus Jared Big Baby Anderson was a definite possibility for Wilder's next fight. Now Wilder has taken a brutal knockout loss in a fight that, you know, it wasn't the most scintillating fight action-wise, but the highlight of the fight was clearly the knockout. That becomes his second back-to-back bad loss. It's like most people are calling for a retirement. Now, I know the fighter, it's up to them to decide if they want to continue to fight, but I agree. It looks like Wilder's had a heck of a run, but he's no longer doing some of the same things that he's known for, and that's where it could be potentially dangerous territory for the fighter. Like, if a fighter is known for having a granite chin, and then they're older, they're at the backstage of their career, and they're not taking the punches well after several wars, then that's usually a sign that the person needs to hang them up. And I can't quite put my finger on it, but for Wilder, his last two performances particularly, even his victory with Robert Helenius, it looks like almost a different level of Wilder, right? Gun shy. He has the right hand cocked, but he doesn't just effortlessly let it flow. It's like that animal instinct, that killer instinct has gone for whatever reason. Maybe the Fury fights, maybe a level of fame and money has been reached, the hunger, the passion, you know, maybe it's losing your undefeated record. I don't know. It depends on each individual person. But for whatever reason, it looks like something is not all the way clicking that previously was there with Wilder. Another downside is the way Wilder, him and Malik Scott, what they're trying to do, I get it, and in theory it sounds good, but in practice it hasn't produced the results. The only time it did produce results was in the fight with Robert Helenius, and that was a first round knockout, and there was only 2 punches that Wilder threw, and we understand that Wilder has that type of game-changing power, but that's not enough to judge a real fight because it ended so quickly. So we don't know, had Helenius lasted a little bit longer, how the fight would look. And that's not taken away from Wilder's victory, but a 1-round, first-round knockout is the only victory that Wilder has now had in several fights. And I kind of feel like Wilder's been set up here. And I'm just doing an Ego Thoughts video to express my thoughts on my YouTube channel because this is what I do. I feel like Wilder's heart got him in trouble. Wilder's willingness to always try to test himself, even when it doesn't make sense. Wilder should have been more active, fighting like tune-ups. Like, for example, Artur Beterbiev was supposed to fight Bivol in a fight for Undisputed. Beterbiev is injured, so the fight got canceled and postponed. Bivol fought some guy most people had never even heard of and picked up his first knockout in 5 years or so. Wilder's schedule hasn't been like that. He's continuing to fight guys way bigger than him, guys like Helenius, who had really ruined Adam Kalnaki's career, as far as I see, a guy that knew him from sparring, so that was a dangerous fight. The Fury fights were dangerous. Luis Ortiz rematch was dangerous. You have a fight with Zhang. I told you that was dangerous. I met Zhang. He's big. That's why I kept telling you guys, he's big, he's big, he's big, because I knew this was a dangerous, dangerous fight. Also, Ego Stradamus strikes again. I told you when Wilder was saying stuff like, hey, I'll highly consider retirement if I lose. I don't like when fighters do that, and I told you guys that, because that means to me that you're thinking about it, right? The fact that you're thinking about, like, it's almost like you're even thinking about losing. If you listen to the great Floyd Mayweather, he says, I never think about losing, you know? And I think that's kind of the attitude you need in anything as competitive as boxing. It could be, you know, a Wall Street broker. You can't feel like, oh, I'm gonna pick all the wrong stocks or make all the wrong poor choices. Or for me, I'm an entrepreneur. So if you want to enter that entrepreneurial industry, you can't be afraid to make mistakes. You can't be thinking about, oh, what if I do this and it doesn't work? So when I started YouTube, I never thought that. I never thought at any point like, oh man, this is too much for me. You know, there's times where things happen and life throws things so it feels like it's too much, but you just can't. I don't believe in putting certain things in the universe like that. And when Wilder was talking about this could be his last hurrah if he loses, I didn't like that. And it's not due to Wilder saying it. Anybody, if anybody's talking about retirement in that fashion and talking about, oh, I'll highly consider losing if I lose, or I'll consider retirement if I lose, I don't think that's a good look. And like I said, Wilder lived by the sword, died by the sword. He continued to push himself. I think it's wrong that people are trying to kick a man while he's down in this way. Wilder has provided tons of entertainment and value, really woke up the heavyweight division, made a lot of money for himself and family, got into boxing for the right reasons because his daughter had special needs. And then now people are trying to terrorize Deontay Wilder and kick him while he's down. And I think it's corny, to be honest. And I also feel like some of the decisions should have been made better, like activity. I think Wilder should have been more active, not taking all these dangerous fights with much bigger guys, not try boxing. You know, him and Malik Scott, they got this thing where it looks like Wilder's trying to box more. It just doesn't fit Wilder's style, and you got to know that. But as I've said throughout this video, I do think it's a bit weird if they had all these plans to have Wilder fight Joshua, a fight that's been years in the making. If you really want that, it seems like maybe not put up such a tough schedule. Like, I just feel no one else has to have such a tough schedule before the big fight, and let that be a lesson learned. If you have a big money-making fight, which Wilder Joshua would have been and should have been, because really they should have fought for Undisputed when they both were undefeated. That's what people wanted to see. Now people are trying to judge the fight based on where they're both at now, because Joshua has had some sort of renaissance and he's been looking good in his career, picking up some wins. But a couple years ago, Joshua wasn't looking so great and he was losing to Usyk, and he also lost to Andy Ruiz, and people were writing him off. Boxing is like that, right? Boxing sometimes works like that. But everyone's now writing off Deontay Wilder. I do think we've seen the best of Wilder at this point. He's older than Joshua. He's 37. I just can't understand why put up such a dangerous fight with like a 300-pound Zhang if the intent is to make a fight with Jared Big Baby Anderson or a fight with Anthony Joshua, because the way I seen it and the way I've always seen it is Zhilei Zhang was always going to be a super tough out for Wilder because styles make fights. I told you he's big, heavy-handed, he's durable, he knows his way around the ring, he is very economical with his punches unless he has you hurt. He really ruined Joe Joyce's eye and, stopped the juggernaut, the whole run that Joe Joyce had. So this was always going to be a difficult fight for Wilder, especially since it was a do or die fight because they both were coming off losses to Joseph Parker. So I really don't understand why Wilder, towards the end continued to be inactive and take tough out after tough out, literally no tune-ups. Like you look at even a superstar like Canelo, he squeezes in fights where he's heavily favored, right? Where he's the bigger person. Like he was the bigger person versus Jermell Charlo. He was the bigger person versus Amir Khan. So Canelo throughout his career, he's able to squeeze in these fights with no hopers. Guys that don't have as much of a chance to beat him, like Avni Yildirim, right? But Wilder, it was just pedal to the metal. Guys with 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 pound weight advantages. Guys who were taller too, like Tyson Fury. And I think the Fury and Wilder saga, it was very good. It was a great classic trilogy, but I think it truly took a lot out of both fighters. Fury's dealing with some of the effects in his own right, even though he didn't get stopped like Wilder got stopped. He's definitely been affected by those fights, and he looks chinnier. And that's sometimes what these trilogies will do to fighters. It takes something out of you, and I think we've seen it with Tyson Fury, like I said, but we're seeing it maybe even more so with Deontay Wilder, because unlike Tyson Fury's getting fights like Ngannou, Derek Chisora 3, Dillian White. Like all of those fights were really fights that Tyson Fury should win, in my opinion. And he did win all those fights, even though I thought he lost to Ngannou, but on paper, they said he won. So Tyson Fury, while he's getting up here being able to fight a UFC fighter who's novice and never had a pro fight in boxing, and Anthony Joshua would later demolish, Wilder's up here fighting Zhang, a 300-pound Olympian. So that's why I said Wilder has been set up, because at the end of the day, Wilder is the type of fighter who's willing to go out on his shield. He showed you that. So it's crazy to see the levels of disrespect that we're seeing from the fans in terms of like trying to kick Wilder while he's down after what he's done and brought excitement to the division. At least in my opinion, while Wilder had his run, there were some memorable moments. Wilder didn't take it easy. Give Wilder Ngannou, a guy who's never been pro in boxing up until recently. Give Wilder even a Dillian White, who has been stopped before. Zhang, I don't think he's ever been stopped before, right? And he's big. So for me, I try to tell you, this was stylistically a nightmarish fight for a person like Wilder. I'm kind of curious why his team even wanted this fight, especially if there were bigger fights on the horizon like Anthony Joshua or an All-American showdown with Jared Anderson, like they're saying in Saudi. But it is what it is. Boxing is very unforgiving. If he decides to hang it up, Wilder has had a hell of a career. Subscribe.